Welcome to the SBI Podcast, offering CEOs, sales and marketing leaders ideas to make the number.
Welcome to the SBI Podcast. This is a weekly broadcast dedicated to helping you make your number by getting your peers to share with you how they are making theirs. Today's topic is account-based marketing. This is a topic that is getting much buzz out there today, so we wanted to spend some time on it. My name is Greg Alexander. I'm your host today and also CEO of SBI. And joining me today is Leo Tucker. Leo, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate you having me on to discuss account-based marketing. My name's Leo Tucker. I run global marketing and sales enablement for PGI. PGI is the world's largest dedicated provider of collaboration software and services to business, hosting over 1 million people every day through our meeting products.
Okay, very good. All right, so we've got a SVP, CMO here to talk about account-based marketing from a large software company. This is a topic that's got a lot of hype right now, and today we hope to bring some clarity around what it means. Leo's going to share with us their journey, where they are on that, et cetera. So let me jump into the questions here. So, Leo, I guess I'll start with, have you implemented account-based marketing? If so, how far into the journey are you?
We have. We started in account-based marketing about 6 months ago, so we're relatively new, but we have gotten there pretty quickly. As you noted, ABM's a journey, and it's likely one without a finish line. We started with a couple of basic elements, Greg. First, we had to take the time to make sure we had defined the right accounts, both from our existing customer base and for new targets. Our initial approach, once we defined those accounts, was to reach out to them using syndicated content, placed with a partner called Madison Logic. And then finally, we built upon that guaranteed leads program by layering on display advertising, leveraging both our target list from Madison Logic as well as accounts that are currently in an advanced stage within our sales pipeline, even if they weren't on our initial target list.
Very interesting. So for those that are considering whether or not account-based marketing is for them, I'm going to ask this question of Leo. I think I know the answer, but the value here for the audience is in the question itself. So, Leo, allow me to have you be my guinea pig, so to speak. Your sales cycle, the sales cycle there, is it long, complex, involving many stakeholders, departments, and decision makers?
Certainly for our mid-market and larger clients, it is long and complex. The sales cycle can run anywhere between 3 and even up to as much as 18 months, if not longer, for 7-figure deals. IT is almost always involved, Greg, but we also deal with sales, with marketing, HR, communications, you name it. Anybody who needs to collaborate can be involved, so it can be a time-consuming and complex process.
Yeah. So I asked that question because in those scenarios, and that's a very typical answer when the mid-market to enterprise accounts with long sales cycles, those are the ones that are best for account-based marketing. If it's more of a transactional sale defined as maybe less than a couple of months or so, sometimes account-based marketing is not a good approach. I'm not saying you should ignore it, but it's usually best applied, at least our experience says, it's best applied when you're in a long, complex sales cycle. You know, you started off by discussing your journey, and one of the first things you did there was establish a list of targeted accounts. So tell the audience a little bit about what that list looks like, how you went about building that list, et cetera.
Sure. Well, we actually came up with 2 separate lists. One of existing customers. We have 50,000 plus customers that we want to go cross-sell and upsell to, as well as a named prospect list for folks that fall within the parameters of our what I would call our ideal target account. And for us, that ideal account is typically a mid-market company, typically with a large number of knowledge workers, given that they're most likely to need to collaborate, and with a distributed workforce, whether that's folks that work from home or whether that's companies with multiple offices. So we went through kind of a master look at the companies that we might want to target, applied those filters against that, and then added them to the list. We then, and we'll probably touch on this at some point, we then prioritized, of course, by where do we think is the most revenue potential.
Yeah, okay. And you mentioned to me before we jumped on here that the list has got about roughly 3,000 names, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now that's a little bit more than what we typically see. So there's probably a reason for that. I think I understand the reason, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. Mid-market, decentralized workforce, high concentration of knowledge employees. That can apply to many, many different industries and lots of different use cases. Is that the reason why the list is a little bit bigger than normal?
That's exactly correct. It can be. You can go across any of 7 or 8 industries. It can be, just a huge number of accounts. Although 3,000, Greg, sounds like a big number, and it is, when you look at it with respect to the number of sales reps we have, it's not as big as it might seem. So what we've done here is we've allowed ourselves to have 20, 25 accounts, mid-market size accounts for our mid-market sales reps, and then roughly the same number of prospect accounts for them to go after. So I think, at least in our case, we wanted to make sure that we were providing that type of targeting for all of our reps, and we happen to have a big sales force.
Yeah, okay, well that makes sense. All right, that takes me to my next question, speaking of sales. So your sales team, the sales process there itself, is the sales team required to go wide and deep in their accounts in building many relationships, or is this a situation where they sell to a single decision maker?
Now, in most cases, they need to go wide and deep. Collaboration solutions can be used across almost any part of the business, right? So it's often necessary to build relationships across marketing, across sales, corporate communications, investor relations, and so forth. That said, the IT relationship is still the cornerstone relationship for us, primarily because they hold the key to getting to a lot of those business decision makers. And, of course, they frequently still hold the budget. So we try to go wide, and then we try to go deep, particularly with our IT partners.
Yeah, okay. So what we're hearing from Leo today is we've got a situation, we've got a list of targeted accounts. We've got lots of salespeople with tightly defined territories that are a blend between existing accounts and prospects. And in order to sell this particular product, which is a collaboration tool, it requires you to go wide and deep in accounts. And that's hard to do. And if it's just the responsibility of the salesperson to go wide and deep, it's going to take a while and the failure rate might be high. So this is a great example where we've got marketing and sales partnered together. And marketing is doing their part to try to help that sales rep go wide and deep. So that's a great example. Let me jump to my next question, which is very much a sales question. But you strike me as a sales-friendly CMO, so I'm going to ask it. Will your company make or miss the revenue goal based on a few big deals throughout the year?
First of all, I better be a sales-friendly head of marketing because it's so important. But to answer your question, Greg, we hit a lot of singles and doubles, but we do count on landing some big deals throughout the course of the year. So yes, a big win or a big loss on the other side can absolutely make the difference between making or missing our revenue target.
Yeah. And the reason why that's a relevant question, audience, is that account-based marketing is perfect in that environment. I mean, if the year is going to be made or missed based on a few big deals, which is very typical in B2B, not that the singles and doubles aren't important, they turn the lights on, but to get the overachievement, if you will, there's usually, maybe a half a dozen deals a year that are, very, very, very large. And having marketing focused on those with sales increases the probability of closing those. Having marketing focused on helping us generate those big deals and getting prospects interested in talking to us about big transformational projects can be a huge help. So if you're listening and you're somebody that's going to live and die by the big deal, account-based marketing should be on the top of your priority list if it isn't already. All right, my last question for you in this segment, and then we'll take a quick break, is this concept of land and expand sales strategy. So if I heard you correctly earlier, it sounds like you do have a cornerstone relationship in IT, and maybe that's your landing point. But since you have to get kind of buy-in across the organization, maybe you expand from there. Is that an accurate depiction?
That is absolutely accurate. PGI has a number of collaboration products, and so our entry point, though typically to the CIO or to IT, can be with any number of products. So typically we'll come into an account with whichever product they happen to want first. And then while we're proving ourselves with that first product, we are attempting to cross-sell additional products or services in our portfolio to the customer. That's a very key part of our sales and marketing approach.
Yep. Okay, so if you're listening and you deploy land and expand, which you enter with one product, but you got a product portfolio, and then the task from there is not to open the account, but is to get the account to buy more of that first product you sold them, and also to get the account to buy additional products that are in the portfolio. We call that land and expand, and account-based marketing is perfect for that, and PGI is a good example of how to make that happen. All right, so audience, so what's your takeaway from this first segment here? Well, account-based marketing is for you if you have a complex selling motion deployed against a list of targeted accounts, requiring your sales team to go deep and wide in these accounts using a land and expand sales strategy. And it's best for companies who are dependent upon the big deal. All right, we're going to take a quick break, But before we do, I want to let you, our audience, know that we just released our workbook for 2017 titled How to Make Your Number in 2017. And for our repeat listeners, as you know, this is the single best piece of content we create every year. We've been doing it for 10 years. It's a 250-page workbook that captures all of the emerging best practices out there, and we like to think it's a blueprint for revenue growth. So it was written for executive leadership teams inside of companies with aggressive revenue growth targets who don't have a lot of time to waste and have a lot on the line personally. So if you're planning for 2017, if you've hit your planning cycle, you're going to want to read this because it's going to increase the probability of making your number. So here's how to get it. Go to sbi.tips/2017 workbook. That's 2017 workbook. Okay, we'll be back after the break with more from Leo. This is the SBI Podcast.
Each day, you receive hundreds of emails, tons of text messages, countless telephone calls, and sit in too many meetings. How do you find ideas to make the number with all this noise? The SBI blog filters all this nonsense for you and presents only first-rate ideas to make the number. Simplify your life. Subscribe to one blog and read the best content. Go to salesbenchmarkindex.com and subscribe today.
Welcome back. You're listening to the SBI Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Alexander, and today's guest is Leo Tucker, SVP of Global Marketing at PGI. Today's topic is account-based marketing. So let's jump back into the questions. So Leo, I'm going to ask you some questions that usually get me in trouble when I ask them, but I hope that's okay to ask them, and if I step anywhere where you don't want to go, just tell me and we'll move on. So demand generation. Has your current demand generation efforts failed to generate significant revenue that can be directly attributed to these programs?
That's a great question, and no, you're not getting in any trouble here. But before switching to the ABM approach, we were generating a relatively significant amount of revenue opportunities. But what we weren't doing is we weren't doing so in a way that was particularly efficient, Greg, especially on the new logo generation front. The switch to ABM was predicated on becoming more efficient in our lead gen efforts so that we could land more prospects that are really, truly in our sweet spot without the waste of dollars and people that come with pursuing prospects that don't fit the profile of who we really want in our portfolio. Yeah. So for us, it was about efficiency more so than just pure volume.
Excellent. So that's a great answer. We have seen recently, and I say recently, say maybe in the last 12 months, in fact, this is documented heavily in our 2017 report that just came out, that demand generation programs have kind of hit a wall. I mean, there was a lot of work put into standing up marketing automation, re-architecting campaigns, coming up with compelling offers, huge investments in content marketing. And when the approach is kind of more mass market, what ends up happening is we catch a lot of prospects that aren't really ideal for us. And then we spend all of our time, sifting through the thousands and thousands of inquiries. And to your point, it's just not very effective at all. So I think this is one of the reasons why enterprise-grade B2B companies are moving towards account-based marketing. All right, let me skip ahead a little bit to the question of inbound marketing. So this was all the rage. So produce a bunch of content, make sure it's optimized for the keywords, throw it out there, and hope that people are going to be searching for those words or searching on social and then ultimately finding you. The problem with this is that it forces you to sit around and wait for those key accounts to find you, which, salespeople and companies that have big revenue growth don't want to be sitting around and waiting for these key accounts to find you. So was that happening over there at PGI?
Well, I'd like to say no, but unfortunately I can't. Mm-hmm. So yes, that was absolutely happening at PGI. And we've tried to combat that, Greg, in a couple of ways. One is we've tried to place our content at the sites where our targets are going, as opposed to relying purely on pay-per-click and search, right? So a lot of our ABM efforts, and I mentioned a partner on this earlier, revolve around syndicated content. So we provide target account lists to our syndicated content partner. They then return leads to us anytime a person from our named account list downloads PGI content at any one of literally dozens upon dozens of sites. So that's one approach that we take. The other approach is, I think, a relatively unique approach to PGI. We also serve up display ads, which in and of itself is not unique, but we do so in what we call a closer account. So we look at accounts that are at a certain stage in our sales pipeline, and to your point, rather than waiting for them to come to us, they will see our display ads all over the web, wherever they're going. Mm-hmm. And so we're proactively not only trying to generate new leads, but proactively reaching out and progressing leads from the top to the middle and bottom of the funnel through display advertising that's targeted only to those accounts that are at a certain stage in the sales cycle.
Let's talk about that a little bit. So what I love about that is that you're accelerating the pipeline, because you're basically following around the internet these people that are in your pipeline in various stages and putting your content and your display ads in front of them. Is that did I understand you correctly?
You understood me correctly.
That's really interesting. And then let's say that somebody in your pipeline, an individual, takes the action you want them to take. They download a piece of content. And let's say that prospect is, mid-funnel. What happens from there?
Well, at that point, it's a combination of sales working with marketing. Right? So you referenced earlier the close link between sales and marketing. At that point, we have a direct line. If something's in the middle of the funnel and it's a recognized opportunity and they download content, the first thing we're going to do is reach out to the sales account owner for that and ensure that the salesperson knows that an account in which he or she is involved is looking at our content, because that's obviously an indicator that the efforts are being successful and that he may or may not need to pick up the phone and contact that customer.
Fantastic. Talk about being friendly to sales. If I was a salesperson and I got a call from my marketing peer and said, hey, this deal that's in your pipeline that's critical to you hitting your number this quarter just did X, Y, Z, I would be a very happy guy. So that is a great example of marketing and sales alignment. All right, let me move on to this concept of lifetime value. So account-based marketing, at least our research would say, is best for companies that have kind of these key account or strategic account and named account approaches where a deal in one of those accounts is usually it's worth 2 times what a typical deal is worth. It seems that this 2x benchmark is kind of the Mason-Dixon line on whether or not account-based marketing is worth it. So in your world, you've got these stratified set of accounts, these key accounts or strategic accounts, whatever you want to call them. The value to the organization, is it worth more than 2 times the average deal?
That's first of all, a great benchmark. So thanks for providing that, and a great question. What I can tell you definitively is that the total lifetime value is significantly higher, primarily because these accounts that we're targeting are more likely to need more of our products than a customer that perhaps may stumble across one of our offerings but not really be a perfect fit. Right? They're also more likely to find value in a multi-year contract, which by definition is going to extend the lifetime value. Whether it's exactly 2x or not, I'd love to be able to tell you, because we're about 5 months into this effort now, though. I can't promise. I can't quote that with complete accuracy, so I'm going to refrain from giving you a number.
Yep. Okay. Very good. But you added quite a bit there, which is let's focus on lifetime value versus a deal, right? So if you're deploying a land and expand strategy, you might develop an account over a long time period where, 3 years from today, they generated a lot of revenue for you, but the original transaction might have been modest at best. So the key here for the audience is stay focused on lifetime value. Apply ABM in situations where multi-year contracts are valuable to you, where multiple products could be bought. So that was a good value add there, Leo.
Great.
All right, my last question in this segment is about the relationship between sales and marketing. So there's a very healthy relationship there between you and Scott. Was it always that way? And do you think ABM has contributed to this harmony that sits between sales and marketing?
Oh, I certainly think that ABM has helped. One of the things that PGI has done a good job of historically is marketing has reported into the same. It has actually reported into the head of sales. So I report to the executive vice president of sales. So I think organizationally, from a historical perspective, we've had the right organization to stay closely aligned. But that said, even with close alignment, with something of a spray and pray strategy from a marketing perspective, forgive the term, you're not going to have as close of alignment as you will when the salespeople know that you're devoting, as much of your budget as possible to the exact same list of targets that they're focusing on. Mm-hmm. So there's no question that it's improved. And probably the biggest reason for that, Greg, is simply that salespeople realize that they don't have to do everything for themselves, as you alluded to earlier. We're helping them.
Yeah. Marketing reporting into sales, that's interesting. We don't see that as often as you might think. And for the marketing leaders that are listening right now, that might make them a little uncomfortable, but it seems to be working for you. So do you advise organizations to do that, or do you think that's just a unique situation there at PGI?
I absolutely advise organizations to do that. It's an interesting question, and one that I'll answer pretty concisely here. I think in a lot of cases, most very successful marketing executives, like any other, are programmed to reach as high as they can in the organization and to keep climbing. But for the benefit of the organization, the sales and marketing alignment is so utterly important that I think it's going to drive marketing professionals to be more successful than they would if they didn't have that same alignment. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, I think, allow them to attain whatever they want to within the organization. So I've seen it as a big plus, even though that may be a bit unconventional.
Yeah. Well, compliments to you for being a company-first person. I mean, you clearly are putting the company's interests instead of your own interest ahead, and it's working for you. And you've been able to kind of check your ego, if you will, and do what's right. So big compliments to you there.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so the conversation between Leo and I should have given you a lot to think about. Account-based marketing can help companies who have reached the limit on the traditional demand gen and lead management efforts. So we're going to take a quick break, but before we do that, here's something valuable to you. So SBI just released its new app and a new website. And what it does is it allows you to create an account and personalize your experience with us. You can select how often you want to receive our content, in what format, and on what topic. So gone are the days of having to fill out a form for everything, thank God. So go ahead and check us out. You can find the app in Apple's App Store. Just look for Sales Benchmark Index, or you can go to our website at salesbenchmarkindex.com/register. We got one more segment with Leo on the topic of account-based marketing, so stick around after the break.
Do you have too many things to do and not enough time to do them? Is finding time to learn best practices almost impossible? The SBI podcast is your solution. Turn time spent exercising, commuting, and traveling into productive learning time with a subscription to the SBI podcast. SBI podcast listeners get unique insight into real-world sales and marketing issues through interviews with your industry peers every week. Find us on iTunes by searching for Sales Benchmark Index Podcast and subscribe today.
Okay, welcome back. This is our last segment with Leo Tucker on the topic of account-based marketing. Let me jump back into the question. So Leo, you mentioned earlier about building a list of accounts, but you also talked about prioritization, and I didn't jump on it at that point because I knew this question was coming. So help the audience understand how you prioritize those accounts.
Sure. We build our account list based on a combination of factors, Greg. starting with revenue potential and company size. From there, we look at a form of propensity to buy, if you will, through the lens of industry. We look for industries with a high number of knowledge workers. And, of course, for existing customers who we also target for cross-sell and upsell reasons, we factored in how much revenue we felt was still available in that account.
That's fantastic. So what I understand is you have a pretty good understanding of revenue potential per account. You've done some white space analysis within the existing account base. So in essence, you basically have that list, that large list of 3,000, ranked top to bottom, best to worst, based on that set of criteria that you just laid out for us. Is that correct?
We do. Correct.
Okay, fantastic. So for these prioritized accounts, do you have complete contact records for each buyer and influencer? This issue of database management and contact management, account-based marketing seems to be a tricky one to solve. So have you solved that?
Boy, I wish I could answer yes to that, but no, we haven't solved that. It's extremely tricky. We're constantly working, Greg, on creating and maintaining contact information, as you can imagine. We all do that, but it remains a major challenge and unfortunately one that's, I think, going to be something that we're continuing to tackle for quite a time to come.
Yeah. And is that one of the reasons why you've gone to this advertising approach that you mentioned earlier, which I think your partner, what was your partner's name there again?
Madison Logic.
Yeah, it sounds like they're doing a great job for you. So how do people learn more about Madison Logic?
MadisonLogic.com
Okay.
would be the easiest approach, I'm assuming.
Okay. So when you don't have the contact records, I guess what you're then doing is you're betting on IP lookup, and you're putting advertisements in front of companies that at least work for those companies, maybe not the right individuals. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. We're doing two things. Part of it absolutely is it's a domain lookup, to your point. So we're getting in front of the right customers. And a lot of the companies that are specializing in ABM, such as Madison Logic at this point, have enough intelligence, even if we don't have a name, to know what department, for instance, somebody is from that might be searching the website. So we can look and see, this would almost certainly be a marketing person or a salesperson or an IT person that's downloading this content. So we can narrow down without knowing exact names. But then, of course, at the same time, we're using other companies and other approaches to try to fill in those contact lists as best we can.
Yep. Okay, very good. All right, let's talk about insights now. So in order to pull off account-based marketing, we need to develop rich insights specific to each of these accounts to enable the marketing and sales teams to be highly relevant and personalized. So tell the audience a little bit about, now I know you're only 5 to 6 months into the journey, so this might be an unfair question, but have you started developing account-level insights?
Actually, we have, and we started that by virtue of the way we were organized in sales even prior to our account-based marketing activities. So for our largest accounts, which we call diamond accounts here at PGI, give or take 20, 25 accounts, we absolutely know those accounts quite well, and we approach our sales and marketing efforts in a way that's as personal as we possibly can. For the broader list of 3,000 that you and I discussed earlier, we do it less, or we have less of that information now. Of course, we're building that as we go. And so the approach we take is to put companies into buckets, for instance, with assumptions such as financial services typically have these types of issues and are pursuing these types of initiatives, as an example. So we may look at it by industry, we may look at it by company size, we may look at it by their technology domain, but we try to fill in what gaps we can and then make some educated guesses.
Yeah. So I love that approach. So you've got these diamond accounts, these 25, and for there, it's worth the effort of developing individualized account-based insights. But to try to do that across the remaining, almost 3,000 accounts would be a huge undertaking. So categorizing them and then certainly not providing generic content by any stretch, but maybe not to the level of personalization on those top 25. I think that's a best practice, and we've seen that now work very well. All right, next question is personalization. So how do you get this personalized content and messaging in front of these buyers and influencers? Is this what you're using Madison Logic to do, or are there other techniques to get this messaging in front of these buyers?
It's a combination of approaches. So yes, some of that's through Madison Logic, particularly when we get to the closer accounts that we referenced in the display advertising. But this again gets back to the linkage between sales and marketing. So a lot of what we do for personalized content, particularly for our largest accounts, comes through personalized or customized sales presentations and sales interactions. So this is where we take the knowledge that we have of our diamond accounts, for instance, and we will craft individual presentations based on not only, of course, the objective of the meeting, but very specific to that customer. And sales and marketing work together in order to get that done.
Okay, very good. Makes sense. All right, Leo, unfortunately, we are out of time. But on behalf of everyone who listened today, I got smarter. I hope they did too. So thanks a bunch for coming on the show and sharing what you know about this topic.
Well, thank you for having me, Greg. I appreciate it.
All right. All right, and I want to thank you, our audience, the SBI audience, for tuning in. If you want to learn more about account-based marketing and all the other emerging best practices top leaders are deploying to make their numbers, go to salesbenchmarkindex.com/register and create an account. But until next time, as always, I wish you good luck as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on SBI services, case studies, the SBI team and how we work, or to subscribe to our other offerings, please visit us at salesbenchmarkindex.com.